In the podcast Nice White Parents, reporter Hannah Jaffe-Walt, you may know her from This American Life, started looking into this one school in her neighborhood after her kids became school age in New York City. Hannah examines this public middle school, traditionally filled with black and brown students, after a number of white families arrive. And then, not satisfied she fully understood what she was seeing, she went all the way back to the founding of the school in the 1960s, and then up to the present day again. Eventually, Hannah realized she could put a name to what was getting in the way of making the school better all these years. White Parents, Nice White Parents, is a fascinating listen that's deeply relevant today. It's made by Serial Productions, a New York Times company, same people who made the hit podcast Serial and S-Town. All episodes are now available wherever you do get your podcasts. Hi, and welcome to 2020 Politics War Room with James Carville. I'm Al Hunt. We're proud partners with the Sign Institute, American University. We can't wait to get back. This is clearly a very big week, a marquee week, so you got to have, James. If you have a marquee week, you got to have a marquee guest, and we do. But first, I want to thank all of our listeners and subscribers on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and every place else. Now to our marquee guest. You know, James, if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the people of the hour, our guest is the keeper of that clock. House Whip Jim Clyburn of South Carolina. More than late Mayor Daley, Jim Farley, or Mark Hanna, he's the kingmaker, whose February endorsement paved the way for Joe Biden's coronation this week. You can look at the race in two ways, BC before Clyburn and AC after Clyburn. Congressman, we are honored to have you join us in an incredibly busy week. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I don't know about that kingmaker stuff, but I'm hopeful we can bring this home. As James Carville would say, I hope we can stick the landing.
Well, you certainly start. Let me before we get to politics, presidential politics. Let me start with a couple critical legislative questions. On Saturday, you're the House Whip. On Saturday, the House is going to pass a big postal bill aimed at stopping the Trump administration's efforts from impeding any mail voting this fall. I'm sure you have the votes to pass it. Are you going to get any Republican support, and can you back Trump down on this?
I don't know if we'll get any Republican support on it, but I sure hope we do. I know that there is Republican support for it here in South Carolina. I've heard from some of them already today, wanting to make sure that we have enhanced ballot boxes in addition to in-person voting, much like they do in Colorado. So I think that the whole concept is catching on. I've just got off the phone with my staff up there, trying to make sure that the language we have in this bill will let states know that they ought to keep in mind social distancing when they start talking about early voting or absentee voting, so that we can put monies in there to assist states with the added expense of having more poll workers working earlier and more days rather than election day. I think we need to declare, for all practical purposes, if not by legislation, October to be election month, to run up to election day. So we got to do this. I mean, we ought not have people putting themselves at risk just to vote.
Congressman, a lot of the talk about that postal bill is about money, but isn't the most important part, the most important element, to stop the Postal Service from cutting back on essential services, overtime pay, a hiring freeze, stop them from doing that. You need more people with the avalanche of mail voting, treating ballot applications as they have in the past as first class to get priority, mail trucks going out when they're full. Isn't that really the important stuff that sometimes gets overlooked in this?
Absolutely, and that's going to be in this bill. This whole stuff about having less than first-class mail for voting is just not what we ought to be doing. I think that we ought to recognize the fact that the post office is embedded in our Constitution. The post office is a critical part of almost any community. I call it the thread that has held the fabric of our nation together. That's what makes us one. The post office, more than anything else that I can think of, has been the element, institution, if you will, in these rural communities that have kept them connected to the rest of the world. And so we shouldn't violate that in any way.
Congressman, do you trust the new Postmaster General DeJoy to abide by any of those elements that you pass in the face of pressure from the White House?
Absolutely not. No, I don't. And that's why I think we need to make it clear in this language that anything to the contrary will lead to him being hauled before the Congress and hopefully dealt with as if he's any other criminal for breaking the law.
James Carville.
Well, Congressman, all politics is local. Let's talk a little bit about South Carolina. And the Cook report just moved South Carolina Senate race, the Democrat Jamie Harrison against incumbent Republican Lindsey Graham, from likely Republican to lean Republican. Does that reflect what you're seeing and feeling on the ground in South Carolina?
Absolutely, it does. Except that I'm getting to the point where I think I'll call this thing a toss-up. I know that's me thinking about my protege, but in my mind, it's a toss-up. I think Jimmy can pull this off. He has run a great campaign. I've never seen a campaign run the way this one has been run, not in South Carolina. He's doing an outstanding job. He's raising the money that nobody expected him to raise. He is polling well. He's defined himself in a way that most South Carolinians, even the ones who don't plan to vote for him, are just admiring the way he's conducting himself in this campaign. And he's winning over independents. He's beaten Lindsey in the independents by 10 points. So if he holds that, he's going to win.
Wow. And how's my friend Joe Cunningham in the first district, that coastal district, butts a lot of your district too. Is he doing? How's he doing? I'm sure he's a big target for the Republicans.
I think Joe's going to be fine. He has sort of a celebrity as his opponent. The young lady who has the Republican nomination was the first woman to graduate from the Citadel. She's not the first to attend, but she's the first to graduate, and that has made her somewhat of a celebrity. But I think Joe is running a solid campaign, and I think he's going to get reelected.
One of the things, of course, I've been in Southern politics not quite as long as you, but almost. And one of the problems that we have is we have Democrats across the South of the country. We have a very good turnout ratio with older African Americans. We have traditionally lagged behind with younger. Do you see activity or signs that is going to change and we can get more younger people, particularly more younger people of color, to vote in this election than we traditionally do?
I think so, and I think a lot of it has to do with people being able to see folks who look like them involved in this process, not just as candidates, but as talking heads, etc. When you see people in your age group on the television set talking about politics and voting, and you see that they've got the kind of experiences. A lot of these people are being seen for the first time this year. A lot of young people who were involved in the Obama administration, I'm talking about people of color, it was unknown, and people didn't know. They now see them, and they identify with them. And I think they're bringing a lot of young people into this. I think that's what's happening with Jamie. When Jamie came back here to run the Democratic Party, he spent 40 years as our chair. He developed a group of young people, recruiting 40 to 60 every year. He did it He's in his 50th year. And so many of those young people are now in the state legislature, a lot of them on city councils and school boards all over South Carolina. And of course, Jimmy, being who he is, came to me with the idea. I told him I thought it was a great idea. He came back a little while later and told me, he said, well, no, I'm getting ready to do this thing. And I'm going to call them Clyburn Fellows. I thought he was doing me a big favor. I said, well, that's great, Jimmy. Thanks for honoring me. He said, I need $50,000 to get started. so he's done it well, and I still support it.
Congressman, let's go to this convention, this virtual convention. But let me start with Kamala Harris. Talk about the Harris factor in this election. And you can tell us now, was she your first, second, or third choice?
All of the above.
Boy, I can see why you're so successful.
Look, I never told Joe that I had any one choice. We talked about 10 or 12 people that he had in mind. And we talked about pluses and the minuses and talked about applying the head and the heart. And I said to him, what I want you to do is let the vetting take place, let the polling take place, and when they come back with their results, you apply your head and your heart. And quite frankly, this thing went all the way down to the end. And then there were 3 people still on his mind right up to near the end. And then I said, the last thing I said to him, I said, well, don't let your heart get in the way of your head. And that's the way we left it. And so this is what he decided to do. And I think he made the right choice. She's an excellent candidate. She's acquitted herself very well during the campaign for president, and she's been elected statewide in California. And she's a great debater. Is what you need to complement the ticket. She has the passion that Joe Biden has the compassion, and I think they're going to make a great team.
Congressman, there has been, ever since your endorsement almost, the schisms in the party have certainly been lessened. But there's still some griping from the left. I saw today a bunch of left-wingers were complaining that your colleague, AOC, only got 1 minute to talk at the convention. Does that worry you any?
Well, I would say to them, I only got 3.
And you're the whip.
Yeah, I'm the Majority Whip. I think that, and I'm that for the second time. I'm 80 years old. I've been in this business for a long time, and I've got a lot of, but to me, I would rather have 3 quality minutes than 20 minutes filibustering. So I just think that that should not determine the quality. I heard her speech last night. I thought it was a great speech. And I thought it was more than 1 minute. She shouldn't have said a whole lot in the time that she had, and I thought it was a great speech. I liked it a whole lot.
Sir, you've been to other Democratic conventions. The pandemic forced this to be different, to be virtual. Are we ever going to get back to real in-person conventions? Should we? And if so, how should they be reshaped?
Well, I think we'll probably get back to in-person conventions, but I think it will be much different than what we've had in the past. Because the conventions in the past grew into being one big festive occasion. Now, it's great to have festive occasions, but I think you can do it with much less of the let's just say of the expenses that have been involved in the past. I think the way we're doing this year will redefine how we do conventions going forward, and maybe we can have things done in 2 parts and meet for a weekend rather than stretching out a whole week, and that's just gotten to be too expensive.
So, Congressman, I know something about you. I want to talk about a personal thing. That you have a daughter that is a PhD that's very active. Could you tell our subscribers, our listeners, a little bit about your daughter? Because I think it's a great story.
Well, Jennifer is an outstanding person who decided when she graduated college, or when she graduated from high school, really, she told me she wanted to major in political science. So, James, you can imagine, I said to her, I said, wait a minute, I don't think that's anything you want to major in. You can't do much with that. If you're interested in politics, you better learn the art of it. But she insisted, and she went on to college, got a degree in political science. Then she came to me and said, I think I want to go to graduate school. And I had already paid for 4 years of college. I said, look, I don't know about this graduate school business. You're going to be on your own. I told you not to major in political science in the first place. I said, what are you planning to get a degree in? She said, I want a master's degree in teaching. I pulled out my credit card and gave it to her. And she went on and got a master's degree in teaching, went on and got a doctorate. She spent 25 years in the classroom. After 25 years, she went to the University of South Carolina as an administrator, and she's now retired and working full-time in this campaign, running my campaign. And a lot of people think that she ought to be where I am and I ought to be where she is. So we'll see what happens in the future.
So I got some tough questions for you now. What do you like better, yellow peaches or white peaches?
Well, let me tell you, I like South Carolina peaches. The South Carolina peaches, I give peaches to my colleagues on the Hill every year. And we just did that about 3 weeks ago. And one year, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was giving out the peaches. John Lewis came up to me. He said, man, those are great peaches. Thank you very much. I said, well, John, you do know that those peaches did not come from Georgia. He said, yeah, we got the name, but y'all got the peaches. So we give them out, and people love the South Carolina peaches. They're much better than Georgia peaches. They ought to give up their name.
So I know you were in New Orleans for the LSU Clemson game, but when the Gamecocks played the Tigers, I'll be tough here, but which way you leaned?
Well, every inch of the University of South Carolina is in my district. I'm a great friend with the president up there at Clemson. I send students up there. I just gave out 175 scholarships this year. About 10 of them went to Clemson University. And the president called me to tell me, President Clemens of the Clemson, we're great friends. But I got to go with my constituents when the game is on. But this past year I was really torn because, Clemson had a chance to win the championship. But y'all had a quarterback down there at LSU. I went down to that game and I found myself torn with him. I wanted to see him do well, but I'm going to win the game. So that's the kind of thing I go through every time Clemson and Carolina plays. I have splits on my staff, but it all depends what year it is as to who I favor the most, and it all depends who got the best chance of winning the championship.
Oh, thank you so much, sir.
Before we let you go, you've been so kind with your time. Just one more question about this legislative battle over the next month about the relief. State and local governments are going broke. Are you going to be, Trump's resisting, but are you going to be able to provide the kind of assistance they need for voting and other things?
Well, that's one of the things I was talking to staff about today, because I think we've got to at least support state governments in helping them to make it easier for people to vote, especially in this pandemic year that we are operating in. But we have put everything that's needed in the HEROES Act. I think that the public has got to weigh in now because Mr. McConnell has decided he's not going to bring anything to the floor unless the president agrees to it. So I do believe that ought to be an issue in this campaign. If they don't do what's right by state and local governments, I think it's time for those state and local governments to get actively involved in this campaign this fall. That, to me, is a part of what this campaign is all about. The whole fabric of our nation could very well get shredded to pieces after this election if we are not careful. And so I'm hopeful that all these state and local people get involved in this campaign this year they ought to get involved in the funding effort now. When we get back up there in September, they ought to come on to the Capitol and insist that bill get voted on, because they need about $1 trillion. These local communities are not going to be able to function if they have to close down or lay off employees and close down governments. School boards are going to find themselves in dire consequences because so many of them are dependent upon state and local governments to function. So I just hope we just do right, or they should get involved in the campaign and make it the issue.
James, final thoughts with our guest.
My final thought is, just as a New Orleanian, I really want to thank you for helping mentor Cedric, because he looks like he's doing quite well, and I think that young man has a real future in the Democratic Party, and I know it's a large part of the fact that you've helped him along his way, so we thank you.
Well, thank you very much for sending him. I got with him even, the first time he went out, he lost. I went down to New Orleans and sat down with him. I said, now, Cedric, don't you drop out of this politics. You stay engaged. I think that you got a great future. Well, 2 years later, he got elected, and he is now co-chairing the presidential campaign. He has a great future, and I'm so pleased to have been a part of it. And I hope that the people of Louisiana keep sending them up here for as long as he cares to run.
I think he's got real broad support, sir. I really do. And we're all, terribly proud of him and terribly appreciative that you were able to mentor him and, make him into effective political figure he is today. And I just can't thank you enough for coming on our show. It's a big honor to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I enjoy both of you guys. Knowing Al a long time, he won't tell you how long I've known him.
Yes, sir.
Jim Clyburn, thank you.
Yeah.
You'll always be our kingmaker.
Okay, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, James, let's do a little convention talk. I'm first going to be honest. I don't watch much of it. I watch other things. I did watch Michelle Obama's extraordinary speech on Monday night. I thought Jill Biden just radiated authenticity. On Tuesday, Jim Clyburn has captured what Kamala is, and I think it'll be interesting to watch Joe Biden on Thursday night. I think they're doing as well as could be done with the convention. It's more of an entertainment show, sometimes with the starlets as the MCs. The one thing I did catch, the only thing I caught which I thought didn't work, was the 17 people all being the keynote speakers. It was a little bit schmaltzy. But I think the Democrats, any ruptures have either been healed or they're not apparent. And I think they're gonna come out of this thing in as good, if not stronger, shape than they went in, and that's all you can ask for in a convention.
It is. Look, the first time you do something, you always go to. The encouraging thing is, I think Tuesday night was better than Monday night. I watch it a little bit more than you, not after, because you got to comment on it after. But I've been in every Democratic convention since '84. And they're actually can be kind of fun, particularly, you get to see everybody, and, it's a kind of gathering of it's a political version of Mardi Gras.
I want to add to that, because I want to pick up on one, Jim. Yeah, it's that, and that's great. But I think it's more important than that, actually. Dentists have conventions every year. Journalists have conventions every year. I think the idea of politicians from all over the country getting together to nominate a president is a really good thing. They can talk to each other. They can, talk shop. They can get to know different people. And I think we just went overboard with the parties and the money and the balloons and all that. But I like the idea. It doesn't have to be 4 days. It shouldn't be. Maybe Jim Clyburn's right. It should be over a weekend. And I'll tell you something else. Very parochially, it's very good for journalists. It's a chance to meet and talk to people in that kind of an environment. And I have people that I met at conventions, James, I hate to say this, back in the 70s who I still hear from.
Some things in life that everybody on both sides, everything they say is true. All right?
Yep.
They have become expensive. They have become boring. They have become predictable. All that's true. And they're also, if you're a delegate, but you notice when you sign up, it's kind of expensive. I mean, you put something into it, but it just, if anything, it's just a chance every 4 years for people to have a similar ideology and a similar involvement in politics to get together. And I think it produces, I understand all the arguments against it, and they're all valid, and maybe we should shorten them,
Yeah.
or do whatever. But on the whole, I still wish I was in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I do too. I also regret it because I think Milwaukee's a really interesting town, and it's a shame they haven't gotten a chance to showcase. I would bet, a whole bunch of money that the convention will be in Milwaukee in 2024. But I think you're right. I think they ought to be publicly financed. I think Nancy Pelosi has suggested that, Republican and Democrat, shortened, not nearly as expensive. You don't have to make it the great television extravaganza. I think the educational factor has been exaggerated, and we're not going to go. I mean, I went to my second or third convention was 76, where you went in there, the Republicans not knowing who was going to be the nominee. That was really exciting. We're not going to replicate that probably. But your point is right. I mean, to let people from Oregon spend some time with some other city councilors or other state reps from Alabama is a good thing. And let's hope we go back to it.
Look, this is my proposal. I'll throw it out for what it's worth. Never happened, but yeah. I would have them publicly funded, and I would have them in the same city because it would save a lot of money, right? And the city I would have it in is Las Vegas. And the only argument against Las Vegas is blistering hot in August. But the argument for it is they have more capacity than you can imagine. The prices are really, really cheap that time of year. They would kick in a lot of money to have, that many tourists come in the city, particularly if you had the Democratic and the Republican convention. You can build the same podium, and you give them, you have a week difference between the two, and they can put whatever banners or bunting that they want to fit their particular party. But why wouldn't we do that? And in that way, journalists and TV would all set up, and it would be cheaper for the networks. It'd be cheaper for everybody. And of course, you and I have did this 1,000 times. You don't get any votes in Wisconsin for being in Milwaukee, and no one can call you the San Francisco Democrats. Everybody's in the same place, and plus you're in, the Pacific time zone, which really makes it fun at conventions because you're done by 8:30, 9 o'clock.
I agree with that. And also the other bonus is we can check and see which politicians go visit Oscar Goodman's Mob Museum in Las Vegas. So I think, not sure with the venue, but I can be persuaded. Let's we're going to have another show this week, we hope, and we're going to have Michael Bennett, a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Just in 2 or 3 minutes, James, that, we could talk to someone who really knows about it later, but that is a devastating report. It advanced where Mueller was. It advanced things we knew. It is quite clear that you can argue over the definition of collusion. If that's not collusion, I don't know what is. But clearly they had extensive contacts with Russian intelligence now. Roger Stone clearly knew in advance some things that were going to occur. Manafort was talking to a GRU guy. It's incredible.
Look, you can say like you have a 360-degree drawing, and from that's established. From the center of that drawing at any point is 3.14 squared or whatever, pi r squared, right? Mm-hmm. And the Democrats and everybody agrees on we agree on the facts. And the Democrats say that's a circle. And the Republicans say there's no evidence that that's a circle. Well, it's a circular thing. It has the radius computes with what a circle is, what the hell is it? I mean, it don't.
If it looks like a circle, and if it's shaped like a
Circle
and it draws like a circle,
it's a goddamn circle. What are
yeah.
we arguing about? And the other thing, and I say this, the Mueller investigation, and if I had one criticism, and I'm sure Senator Bennett will tell us why, the first thing you learn when you're in the fourth grade and you're watching Columbo or whatever you were back whenever, Jack Webb, follow the money. Follow the money. It neither Mueller or the Senate investigating committee looked into financial conflicts that Trump may or may not have in Russia. And I mean, that's like, wife gets shot. And, you first thing you can look up for is a boyfriend and life insurance.
Well, you hear people, I've heard it this week, say, yeah, it's awful, but it's not going to make any difference. And they say the same thing about John Kasich and the Lincoln Brigade and Cindy McCain and the Bulwark. Yeah, but it doesn't make any difference. You can go back to Access Hollywood during the campaign. You know something? After a while, there's accumulation. And the accumulation does make a difference. And I think Trump is in terrible trouble primarily because he's governed so incredibly badly. But I think that this is just added to it, and it makes it much, much harder, if not impossible, for him to ever come back.
Most of the people that say that it makes no difference are people that want the Democratic Party to be a cult. All right? That's just, there is a great divide in this party. And the divide is this. There are people that say we should be a deep-rooted cult or ideological cult with values that we will never compromise on. And that way, and there are other people like me that say, we're part of a coalition. And we got to welcome, and of course the coalition is going to shift. It's going to change. And there's no evidence that these anti-Trumpers are in this for any financial motive. They're not going to be the lobbyists. I mean, Rick Wilson or Bill Kristol, or Tim Miller or Charlie Sykes, they're not setting up, Potomac strategies after this.
I'd go further than that. I would say they basically have doomed their presence in the Republican Party because I think the haters are going to continue to play a huge role, the Trump people, and they are going to be. So I think, and I think they know this. So I think what the Charlie Sykes of the world are doing, I really do. I don't mean to sound naive, but they are doing this out of principle, not out of personal pursuit.
That is clear to everyone. And
except Marco Rubio.
Yeah. Look, that guy's he's going to have a Senate race in 2022. I mean, he really is. The question is, we got to figure out, who's the best. Democrats have got to be smart in selecting a candidate who can beat Rubio. By the way, on another note of some importance, as you know, I've been very big on this Alaska Senate race.
You have been.
The far right had a big night last night in the primaries. They unseated the Senate Majority Leader, and I've also been, one of the reasons I've been very big on this is the AIP, the Alaska Independence Party. And, Al Gross, who's the independent caucus of Democrats, I think Angus King, it'd be hard for him to get to 50, but he can sure get to 47, and that might spell bingo up there. Really might.
Yeah. There's a pattern in these primaries over the last 4 or 5 months. In the House race in Colorado, House race in Georgia, House race this week in Florida. These are the crazy Alex Jones types who are winning. And it may only be 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever have you, but they're being embraced by Kevin McCarthy and the party. And I think that makes them legitimate issues in the fall.
I just go back.
Let me put it this way. If the Democrats had nominated a bunch of serious congressional candidates who were finished a book on Joe McCarthy, who were communists, to go back to the past, you can bet the Republicans would be making a big issue out of it.
Yeah. So, it's just hard to like express admiration you have for Jim Clyburn. I mean, just what he's accomplished in his life and just his sort of judiciousness, his kind of grace, just his kind of unified view of the world. It's really, you think about the struggles that he's had, it's really remarkable to get a chance there who's at the zenith of his power and respect to get a guy like that and spend a good, 25, 30 minutes with him. It was just a big honor. One of my favorite shows we've ever done.
Well, he is a great politician and a really gentle man, in the best sense of that term. James, there was a flap about, let me just, before we go, about 3 or 4 months ago, some people in the Biden campaign, his daughter, as I remember it, also who he was talking about, runs a super PAC, which supports Democratic candidates. And there was a big flap of whether she was being cut out of the Biden campaign. Do you know if that's ever been resolved?
I think it must have, yeah. I mean, it was like the Postal Service, all right? This was not going to stand.
Yeah.
And I think I'm sure that it was one of these issues that got resolved to everybody's satisfaction.
Good. Good.
But if Jim Clyburn calls me and I'm in a Biden campaign, I said, yes, sir, what am I saying yes to today?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
More than anybody else in that party, with the exception maybe of Barack Obama, but that's it. All right, listen. I agree. It's been a good show. We hope we'll be back again on Friday for another one.
I think we will.
James, for 48 hours. That's all. 48 hours this time. I want you to stay safe. And I want to thank everybody for listening to 2020 Politics War Room. Follow the show on Twitter at Politics War Room. Email us at politicswarroom@gmail.com. That's politicswarroom@gmail.com. Thank you for subscribing. Please rate us, hope, with a 5-star review. And we'll be back on Friday with another really, really fantastic guest. Hey, thanks.
All right.